Swaps. What are swaps? Swaps are an arrangement between two parties wherein they exchange, as the title itself suggests, their obligations with each other. That is, an organization, a party A, has a certain obligation to give to some others, lenders, and party B also has an obligation to its lenders. Now, there is a peculiar need that both parties would want to swap and change their respective obligations for each other. There are currency swaps, there are interest rates swaps, and there are other swaps. So that the parties who are undertaking the arrangement of swaps are actually asking the other party to take upon itself the liability, the debt or obligation that it owes to a third party, and in turn this party accepts another obligation of this party with which it is swapping its obligations. So, they arrange for their respective obligations to be exchanged. Why are swaps needed? Well, because it helps sometimes in enabling two parties to be able to meet their obligations more conveniently, comfortably, because of the nature of the obligations that they are to discharge. They are not in a position to do such obligations, discharge them as conveniently as the other party could. And that other party finds that its obligations could be done more conveniently by the first party. For example, there is party A, which is in America and is dealing with dollars in most of the cases. It has an obligation to a third party to pay in euros. And there is a party in Europe which has an obligation to its lenders to pay in dollars and not in euros. Now, these two borrowing debtor parties can swap their debts and make undertaking that they are going to pay for each other. Obviously, there is a third party that it gets involved, brings them together, does the transferring formalities, and there is now arrangement in the international market for swaps, wherein these arrangements and obligations are undertaken in a manner that all parties feel comfortable about it, including those whose obligations are ultimately going to be discharged. Is there anything wrong with swaps? Well, if the parties are doing it with mutual consent, and there is nothing wrong in the underlying arrangements that they are going for, then there's nothing wrong in it. There is no problem in making life easy, simple, and convenient, more particularly in the business world. Because the more convenient the arrangements are, the more businesses are going to flourish. Obviously, interest rate swaps are, by their very nature, not acceptable to Islam, and therefore they would not be accommodated. They would not even be needed, ideally. But in the case of currency swaps or other similar swaps, if both parties are agreeing and they are knowingly, willingly letting the other party take their obligation, and in turn they are taking the obligation of the other party, why should there be any problem in it? Unless there is something specific pointed out, like, as I said, If it's a problem of interest rates getting swapped, or there's a problem of some payment which otherwise is illegitimate, illicit, or un-Islamic, then there should be a problem. But otherwise, like other arrangements in the financial market, uh, financial derivatives that we have talked about, this arrangement too should not seen to be problematic.